Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah. I'm your host, Dave Markel. This is episode 161, and it's my privilege to introduce you to my guest this week, who asked to be referred to by her first name only. Meet Diane, a survivor of military sexual assault from almost 50 years ago. That time span is a critical aspect to this episode, which you're about to hear. Diane is accompanied by her attorney, Don Michael Barber. Don Michael is here at Diane's request for both moral support and legal support as she recounts her sexual assault at the hands of her military pediatric physician. Diane will be referring to him as Dr. S, as she points out that this case is still being criminally pursued, in a sense, by Diane and Don Michael. That aspect of this episode will become clearer as you listen to Diane's story. What's unique about Diane's experience is that at the time she was sexually assaulted, beginning when Diane had just turned 17, she was not in the military, but rather was the daughter of a military father. Children of military parents are commonly referred to as brats, as you'll hear Diane refer to herself. Her perpetrator, Dr. S, was a military doctor who has since retired, but could potentially still be court-martialed for the reported sexual assaults on Diane. This is a fascinating story, and one which Diane is eager to tell in order to help others who may be in a similar situation. This is an enlightening experience you're going to want to hear. Here's Diane and Don Michael. Hey, SAS listeners, my guests this week are Diane and Don Michael Barber. Don Michael is an attorney and is here to sit in with Diane and be with us and answer any questions that either one of us might have coming up. Thank you both for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I've covered some of what needs to be said in the intro to this episode. Diane, I'd like to ask you to give us some background as to how you reached out to me and what our conversation today is actually going to be about.
Yes, my name is Diane, and I had listened to some of your previous podcasts and had heard of your invitation to your audience to be on your podcast to contribute any information that some of your listeners could benefit from or that could possibly help them. What I'm going to speak today is not something that's well known to the general public, but is known in military environment. But even then, my case is not that well known with the military itself. I would like to start by first saying thank you, Mr. Markel, for allowing me the opportunity to speak about my experience with MST, military sexual trauma, and my attorney, who is with me today, Mr. Don Michael Barber. I would like to speak and then provide time for Mr. Barber to make any comments or answer any questions you may have. I would also like to acknowledge some of my brothers and sister survivors of the past and present who have been in the media and have displayed a strong determination to speak up about their own journeys. They have unknowingly been of help to me in my own journey to speak about my own case of sexual assaults. Virginia Roberts Giuffre and the other survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, USA gymnast of Larry Nassar, survivors of Ohio State University, Dr. Richard Strauss, survivors of Penn State, Gerald Sandusky, Chanel Miller, survivor of Brock Turner, Stanford University, and Giselle Bellico, a French woman who became a prominent figure in the fight against sexual violence, as well as the thousands of others who have and have not spoken up about their own sexual harassments and sexual assaults. I am here today to tell my experience with MST and to provide information and support to anyone who may be survivors themselves, other brats, spouses, DOD employees, active duty, and veterans who are also survivors of military physician sexual assault. I was a few months shy of turning 17 when it was recommended I see a pediatrician adolescent doctor for a simple medical issue. I went to see Dr. S, and during a follow-up visit, he recommended I continue to see him because he thought counseling might be a benefit to me. I had mentioned to Dr. S that my maternal grandfather, who I was close to, had recently passed away. And during follow-up counseling visits, Dr. S indicated he felt I was suffering from depression and anxiety and started to treat me with multiple medications to address those issues. During subsequent counseling visits, I indicated I was a survivor of sexual assaults by 2 close family members. Dr. S recommended I continue to come for counseling sometimes 2 to 3 times a week. He was a senior officer in charge of the clinic, and to my knowledge, none of his staff questioned the frequency of my visits. My counseling sessions went from 45 minutes in length to sometimes 2 to 3 hours. I could hear other clinic doctors take patient charts from his door and see those patients themselves because I was in his office so long. Due to the past family sexual assaults I endured, I was very closed off and did not like to be touched or have anyone near me. Dr. S felt I needed to overcome those feelings and started by holding my hand while I was seated in a chair directly in front of him. That progressed to placing his hand on my knee. I resisted all his attempts to physically interact with me and tried to stay out of his reach. Dr. S offered kindness to me and said how special I was, how pretty I was, and other kind words and compliments. Holding my hand progressed to putting his hand on my knee and pulling me up to a standing position so he could hug me. Being a military brat, I was taught not to cry and display any emotions that would show I was weak. Once he was able to pull me out of my chair, he told me it was all right to cry for the death of my grandfather. He did this several times on several visits, explaining to me it was all right to show emotions and to lean on someone. It is sufficient to say his behavior progressed from hugging me to taking me to his exam table and sexually assaulting me. I was raped repeatedly while under his care for many years on 3 different military bases over state lines. Due to his rank of colonel, overseeing the clinic and the positive things he indicated his staff said and felt about him, plus 2 different statements he made over the years that I understood to be threats. I felt I could not speak up and tell what was happening to me while I was in his office. He knew of my sexual assaults by my family members and used that to start the grooming process. Even though as a teenager, I felt I was not the only survivor of Dr. S. He told me several things about other female patients that I felt were wrong and that he had stepped over the line of professionalism. Many years later, I called the local JAG office, an FBI office, to tell them what happened to me during my time with him. I was told the statute of limitations was over and nothing could be done. I could still not get the other potential survivors out of my mind and brought a civil case against Dr. S and won. I still was not satisfied and wanted to make it right and help any other potential survivors. Years later, I again approached CID and was informed that the Supreme Court had ruled there was no longer a statute of limitations on sexual assault. I made an unrestricted report and a year-long investigation began. During the investigation, the attorneys had access to all the major evidence I had kept from my civil trial. Due to the inconsistencies in my case, I reached out to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, the head of JAG, head of CID, and other high-ranking military and civilian officials in Washington and Quantico. At the end of the investigation, I met with the SJA, and the result of the investigation was probable cause for rape of a minor, but they were not going forward with my case. I had been appointed an SVC from Washington, and she recommended that I write a preference letter to help me explain my case to the base commanding general, who would ultimately decide my fate and the outcome of my case. During the time the CG was reading my preference letter, I reached out to the SVC and stated I felt like the Army thought of me as an enemy trying to hurt the military. Her response was, "You're pretty spot on there, actually. The SJA's job is to manage risk for the general. But at the end of the day, his client is the Army and the general, and that is first priority." Another statement she made was, "They didn't ignore you. They did a full investigation. They listened to you. And in my opinion, Major X and Major Y, who are the ones that most closely looked at your file, actually believe you. The CG and everyone else involved here did not want to recall Dr. S onto active duty with the potential publicity that would involve, just to have him acquitted of all charges for lack of evidence. The CG read my letter and did not change his mind to pursue my case. He left and a new CG was assigned to the base. I contacted a state representative who was initially extremely helpful, and they contacted the new commanding general requesting another look at my case. He too declined to bring Dr. S out of retirement and pursue my case. I submitted a FOIA request for my records and found an additional statement that read, "Provided legal opinion that probable cause existed that Dr. S committed the offense of rape. No further investigation was required. This case can be closed." My state representative recommended I contact their office in D.C. to possibly work on possible legislature that could help my case. I had a virtual meeting with a D.C. staff member, and thereafter, all staff members, both locally and in D.C., refused to acknowledge my emails, my letters, or even speak with me in person when I appeared in person at their local office. From the time of the outcome of my case, I have contacted 2 special committees in D.C., over 250 local, state, and federal politicians, spent hundreds of hours writing letters, phone calls, and thousands of dollars in expenses, and there have been only approximately 5 individuals who have responded to me. I was either told I'm sorry for what you have gone through, or it is not me or my committee who can help you. You should try this person or this committee. I pursued all names and committees I was given, but again, I was either met with silence or sorry, go somewhere else. Throughout the years, I have sought information from the internet, libraries, books, but I have never found documentation of another case such as mine. rape of a brat by a military physician. I finally met a veteran who, when she was on active duty and pregnant, was sexually assaulted by her physician, and a spouse of one of her family members was also sexually assaulted by a physician. I recently met a retiree who, when she was 11 or 12, was also sexually assaulted by a military physician. According to the state comptroller's office in the state I live in, the base contributed at least $27.9 billion to the state economy in 2023. Other details I found that indicate that the base provides over 622,790 jobs in the state and local economy. The installation's economic impact is ranked as the third largest for direct and indirect jobs in the state. I have reached out to local, state, and national media outlets. Several have completely ignored me. Others have indicated they would reach out to me after reading the information I provided, and still others function as if they are interested, start the process of investigating my case, and then go silent. I've been fighting the Army and the military for over 40 plus years for the other brats, wives, DOD employees, active duty, and retirees who are also survivors of military physician sexual assault and will continue to do so. I hope I can be of help to at least one other survivor of any type of sexual assault, whether by physicians or anyone else, either military or civilian. I must keep fighting for the injustices suffered by others and myself. I will not keep quiet against what the military has done to others and myself, nor what society has and continues to do against all survivors, whether they can speak up or choose to remain silent through no fault of their own. Mr. Barber, my attorney, has been exceptionally kind, patient, and is a staunch supporter of mine. I would never have gotten this far without his unwavering confidence in me and my case. He's a wonderful, caring individual and attorney. I would like to finish by quoting Giselle Bellicote. After enduring years of abuse from her husband, Dominique Bellicote, who drugged her and invited others to assault her, shame must change sides, as well as Representative John Lewis. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble.
Diane, I first of all cannot thank you enough for your willingness to be here. The fact that you have elected to take the spotlight off of yourself and put it on these other victims and survivors is commendable and amazing and extremely powerful. I think it adds to your credibility and your strength and your power to acknowledge that there are others who have been through similar experiences. I just think that what you're doing is extremely powerful. It takes a lot of strength. I can tell that it's having an emotional impact on you, and I understand that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are stronger or more capable than any other victim or survivor, but the fact that you are willing to speak out about it says something very unique, as it does with all of my guests on this show. It means a lot to me that you're willing to share and that you want to get this message out. I'm going to address my audience again for a second. I've talked to Diane about my previous role with the Criminal Investigative Division, CID, as a highly qualified expert hired between the years of 2009 and 2014 to oversee and have some input into the training and doctrine of CID and how they handle rape and sex assaults. My issue during those years was more geared towards the investigative aspect of this. And I think one of the things that I want to address as far as CID, there are some amazing, competent people in CID, but that part of that shortcoming was the fact that once that investigation was done, once it was founded, just some of the Army protocol didn't allow for the prosecution. Can you talk a little bit about that and the investigative aspect for you and whether or not you looked at it as a successful investigation?
I understand that in certain respects they had their hands tied. They started the investigation, but then I felt they were not taking my case seriously. I was calling for updates. One investigator told me something, another investigator told me a completely different message. So what I ended up doing is I contacted President Joe Biden, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Secretary of the Army Christian Wormuth, Special Agent Gregory D. Ford, Director of the U.S. Army Criminal Division Command. I contacted the Judge Advocate General of the United States, Lieutenant General Stuart W. Warsh, the Inspector General of the United States, Lieutenant General Donna W. Martin, and Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. Also Congresswoman Jackie Speer, Texas State Representative Veronica Escrod, and many others. When I finally reached out to all these individuals, That's when I started getting information. I was getting phone calls, I was getting emails. Washington appointed an SVC, a Special Victims Counsel, to me. Otherwise, I would not have had that individual appointed to me.
That in and of itself is shameful on the part of the military, to drop your investigation like that, to give multiple answers to questions that should have been answered once and correctly the first time. The fact that you had to go to that effort, Diane, that is a lot of work. I can't even imagine how that must have impacted you in terms of having to reach out to so many people just to get CID to do what they were supposed to do. It boggles the mind. I really can't imagine how you must have felt through all that.
I was not going to let them get away with hiding me under the rug or hiding any other potential survivors of this doctor away. I'm not going to let the Army get away with getting rid of me. I have the other survivors to think about, and that's what's been driving me all these 40 plus years. I cannot say for certain that there are other survivors of this physician, but from statements he made while I was in his office, things he said to me, his behavior he had directed to those individuals. He told me he had a fan club of patients that went to my high school. He told me interactions with them that occurred in his office, and even being with all the medications he had me on, I still understood and felt that that was totally inappropriate behavior. And so that's what's been driving me, that there has to be at least one other person besides myself that this physician sexually assaulted or was inappropriate to some extent.
I can't imagine that there's not. Absolutely. Knowing what I know about sex offenders, sex offender mentality, the fact that he would be one and done with you is highly, highly unlikely. I'm right there with you, Diane. I really hope that somewhere, somehow, someone who hears this or someone who finds out about what you're doing will join you in working towards bringing this guy to justice. I take it he's still alive. I know you said he's retired.
I try and check like once a year how far this individual is away from me, because I don't want to have contact. Last time I checked, was still alive. After that, he had retired from the military. He went to a different state and became a pediatrician again.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's multiple levels about which this case needs to be addressed.
I did contact the medical board of that state and did not receive a phone call back.
Not surprising. We have a very unbelievably strong rape culture in this society that chooses to turn a blind eye to rape and sexual assault and instead point the finger at the victims and survivors and say that they're the problem. That's the purpose behind this podcast, behind this platform, is to try to educate the general public, those in power, the power to make things change. That's the message that we need to get out there. And I thank you again for doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And Don Michael, I want to address you too. I want to commend you for sticking with Diane. I know it's been a long several years of support and help that you're giving her, and I appreciate you too. I just want to hear from you.
It's a blessing to be able to represent her. I had a nonprofit that I started for veterans, and I came to Austin, Texas. Diane came to me by way of another attorney who didn't know how to manipulate the military system to get it to move forward, because a case like hers has to go all the way up to the Pentagon for approval. And me having retired from the military, the last duty assignment I had prior to retirement was working as a JAG for a military hospital in Texas. So I was responsible for talking with every investigating officer, reviewing the findings, and forwarding those on. So you can only imagine how much I know. So to have her come into my lap, and I know the system, I know how to get this to move forward. The problem was everybody wants to shift the blame. So you call the military installation where this occurred at, and they say, well, you got to go to MedCom. So we have to come to San Antonio and talk to them. There's very little communication between them, and the breakdown. Ultimately, this case was founded, more likely than not, that it occurred. And they didn't even ask for an Article 32 investigation.
Tell my audience what that is, because there's a lot of this military stuff that my audience is not going to have any comprehension of at all. So talk about the Article 32, and then I'll talk about the charging process of how once CID substantiates a case, they forward it to the decision makers as to what happens and how those decisions are made, if you could address those.
Sure, depending on the level of the severity of a crime, which is committed, whether it's simply wrongful use of a controlled substance, right? All of these have different processes.
Right.
And it's all covered under the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Correct.
And so what happens is when there's an allegation that is made and it encompasses a military individual, it doesn't even have to have happened on post. It could be anywhere. You're subject to their jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. They do an investigation fully and completely, and then they forward that on to the local SJA office. The SJA office is the Staff Judge Advocate office. And then they review the facts and circumstances. Maybe they talk to CID and say, we need more info. Can you go talk to the neighbor? Whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But in this case, her case was investigated properly by CID. And then they hand that off to the local Command Judge Advocate, or CJA, which is the advisor ultimately to, in the military system, the convening authority, a commanding general over the major installation, decides which cases go to trial and which ones don't. He's not legally trained, and he has every incentive to protect the reputation of the military and his unit. So if I have somebody under me that is doing something so horribly and he's a colonel, I got to sweep that under the rug. I retired in 2015 from the Army, and I joined when I was 17 years old. I wasn't a lawyer then, but I became a lawyer through the Army and for the Army. Mm-hmm. It's just disgusting how the special victim prosecutor, which is also a new thing, like all of these things that they attempt to implement to be buffers between the convening authority, decision maker, and the victim. And there's a lot of steps along the way. Local commanders, brigade commanders, and the convening authority, the commanding general, who have a vested interest in protecting their own.
Don Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the impression I got in working with the Army for 6 years, was that it's not just the issue of protecting the military's reputation, but it's also a matter of personal preference, a lot of personal feelings and ideas and thought processes that go into that decision-making process. And if they aren't trauma-informed, if they aren't someone who knows the dynamics of rape and sexual assault, or as you mentioned, they have absolutely no criminal training whatsoever on what crimes are, how they're defined, how UCMJ actually breaks down certain crimes, all they're going on is their gut feeling and their own personal preferences and ideas and value systems. If victims of rape and sexual assault in their mind are troublemakers, they predominantly are people who make things up, they're predominantly people who are looking for their own attention, have their own agenda, they'll ignore all of the facts of the investigation. Exactly. They'll ignore all of the definitions that the law says. If this happens and this happens, then a crime has been committed. That's not of concern to them. Their concern
I've had so many cases that I've represented where the convening authority asked for a reason to deny the case, find a no. So to answer your original question, an Article 32 investigation is simply the civilian, like collateral, is a grand jury indictment. You have a grand jury that comes together and substantiates the charges, which are already substantiated to the level of probable cause.
Or it wouldn't have gotten to that CG in the first place, right?
He didn't even want to have a hearing.
Yeah, man. And that process was attempted to be changed even while I was still working for the Army. Back in the years of 2009 to 2014, there was some congressional attempts to take that decision-making process out of the hands of the CG.
They did do slight changes, but like you're saying, it's a broken system. Mm-hmm. All the Article 32 investigating officers used to be line officers,
Right.
Signal Corps, infantry. They're the judges to determine a recommendation, which, by the way, the convening authority does not have to go by.
Right. They can make an ultimate decision of their own.
It's a broken system.
So, as you and I and Diane discussed in a conversation, we discussed at length my frustrations with this very problem. And I think it really started back in those years when I was an HQE, that it feels as though we are just pedaling on a bicycle that doesn't have a chain. We're going nowhere. And that frustration mounts. The fact that you, Diane, have that 40 years plus of mounted frustration and yet are still pedaling and working to get that chain engaged and those gears turning, and as you put it, Don Michael, fixing the system, changing the brokenness of it all, I can't thank you enough. I think what you're doing is beyond commendable. It's perseverance beyond what I've seen in most cases. So let's address that. How do you take care of yourself? How do you keep going? I know you said it's for those other victims, but at some point, do you sometimes want to throw up your hands?
I have never been able to. It's really hard to explain or define. I actually feel like I have somebody physically pushing me forward. I get stuck along the way. I cry. I get depressed, but I can't stop. I physically cannot stop this process that I'm in. And it's not for my benefit. It's the benefit for all the others that cannot, for whatever reason, they cannot, will not speak up. They're scared. They've been threatened. And it's not just for me. It's for the other brats. It's for the wives, the employees, the active duty, the retirees. Anybody, whether you're in the military or not, it's not right. And I may not get much further than I am now, but every step of the way, I didn't think I would get much further. When I was fighting this before I met Mr. Barber, I was like, well, I'm not going to get further than this. And then I met him, and then we tried some things, and I got a little bit further. And then I said, well, can I try this? And he would tell me, yes, let's try that. So every step I take, now that I know him, I confer with him, make sure it's something that I can do, it's appropriate. And he tells me, yes, let's try that avenue, let's try this avenue. But it's not something I can stop. I have something pushing me, and I cannot explain it other than I physically feel like something's physically pushing me forward. It's not just a feeling, it's not just a thought. I feel like there's actually somebody behind me pushing me forward to continue with this. And maybe it's my ancestors, maybe it's other survivors on my mind. I don't know how to explain it better than that. It's some entity that's pushing me.
Let me say this about that entity. I'm glad it's there. Keep pushing.
I am very grateful for you. I have listened to some of your podcasts. The ones I can listen to from beginning to end are ones that are more analytical, that you speak with other individuals that you have worked with, and it's more the process. When it's actually listening to some of your other speakers, then it's very difficult for me to get through a podcast. I want to listen to all your podcasts from the very beginning to the very end, and I'm like on number 4. It's hard.
It is hard. And I recognize that. I acknowledge that. Even close family members who know what I do and hear me talk and things along those lines, they're like, I can't listen to that stuff. I just can't. Well, I get that. It's not easy to open your mind to how much harm is floating around out there, what the prevalence rates of rape and sexual assault are. And in fact, it's contrary to what our brains are trying to do, which the number one function of the brain is to survive. Part of that survival process means don't cause me any harm. Do no harm to me. You know, the brain saying that, basically saying, I don't want to hear about bad stuff that's going on around me because it harms me. It hurts me. That's the root cause of rape culture, is the fact that offender mentality cashes in on the human mindset that says, I don't want to hear about this. They just don't want to acknowledge it. And if they do acknowledge it, like some agencies, CID, some commanders, there are others who say, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this to the Army. We're not going to do this to ourselves. We're not going to put ourselves in this situation where we have to acknowledge that this kind of harm exists, not only in the military, but all over. So I think the only way to change that mindset is to keep pushing against it.
And I want to piggyback on your note, Mr. Markel. Like, I'm semi-retired. I've been a lawyer for over 20 years fighting the system.
Yeah.
And it's disillusioning.
Yeah.
And And Diane, thank you for your kind words. But you're the only reason I stay in this, is because there's hope on the other side. It's a daunting task because it's an uphill battle. You're fighting forces that are constantly putting hurdles in your way to make it so you can effectively do your work. Yeah. And in your case, everybody said that your case is valid, but we don't have anything for you, and their answers aren't sufficient. So thank you both.
I do want to say thank you to one particular individual. I won't use her name, but most of the individuals that did the investigation, they really didn't know how to handle me, so to speak. They were used to active duty individuals who had been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed. I was a brat, and they had never encountered a situation such as mine. The first SVC that was appointed to me from Washington, I kind of got from that individual that she did not believe me. I was more just, as the Army says, suck it up, go pound sand. You've gotten this far in your life, be grateful. That individual was transferred to another duty station. My second SVC was an angel. She was the one that told me, they believe you, but they don't want the publicity. She was the one that pulled me out of the room during the last meeting and said, write a preference letter. Let's see if that will help the commanding general rule in your favor. So she was the one that put that idea in my head and was the one that was extremely helpful to me. She was my angel. When the case was closed, as much as I did not like what the outcome was, I did write a letter to her superior officer of what a fantastic job she did for me and how much she helped me. So as much as I said I didn't like the result, she did so much for me and helped me out through the process so much that I had to say thank you. And in any way I could, I talked to her superior officer, and I did write a letter as well, just saying all the fine things she did for me and that she needed to continue in her line of work. Being what she does is not a great job to be in, but I thought she did a fantastic job and really wanted to acknowledge that. So well, I won't say her name, but I do thank her. She will never know how much she helped me.
Well, kudos to her, not only from you that you just mentioned, but from me, and I'll bet Don Michael also appreciates that mentality. The fact that people are there that do acknowledge that this horrific crime exists, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere. So yes, I'm glad that you had that support, Diane. I'm glad that she was there for you, and thanks for acknowledging her. If you're in touch with her still, make sure that she's aware of this episode once I air it and send a copy to her.
I did reach out to her when I initially started with Mr. Barber, and I don't know if she's still in the military, but I did reach out to her, my last contact information with her. I don't know if she still had the same phone number or any way I was not able to reach her, but she knows I wrote the letter. She knows I spoke to her superior officer.
Good.
But it would be nice if she could hear this podcast. So if there's any way I can ever find her, I will definitely give you her information. She's always on my mind.
Great. Let me ask this. Is there anything that we haven't talked about, Diane or Don Michael, that we need to talk about or that you want to make sure airs as part of this episode?
The only thing I have is my preference letter. It's to the commanding general. What she had told me I could write to him, and I wrote from the heart, and any little thing that I could pull out of my hat to try and have him rule in my favor. Major General A, United States Army, Commanding General of Fort X. Headquarters, U.S. Army Garrison, Fort X. 1,450,656 seconds, 24,177,600 minutes, 402,960 hours, 239,857 weeks, 551,502 months, 46 years. That 46 years now, a bit more. That is how long I've been waiting for justice for the multiple sexual assaults I endured from Colonel S., an Army physician who did not live up to his Hippocratic oath as a physician. The Hippocratic oath taken by doctors promises they will abstain from doing harm to their patients. He was a military colonel whose conduct was unbecoming an officer. I endured these sexual assaults on 3 different military bases, in 3 different states. Not only was my mental and physical mental health compromised at the time of the sexual assaults, but based on recent medical studies, women who have been sexually assaulted have a higher risk of developing a type of brain damage that has been linked to cognitive decline and stroke. This is information from a story by author Rebecca Thurston, a professor and director of the Women's Biobehavioral Laboratory at the University of Pittsburgh's Graduate School of Public Health. I understand you may not even read this letter, but on the mere chance you will, I have a story to tell and how my life has been ruined and how it will never be whole, free, and happy. I will never have justice nor peace in my life. I don't trust people, and I especially don't trust any man. I don't trust the military to give me justice for the repeated sexual assaults I endured over the years from Colonel S. while he was a physician at the 3 bases. I tried in the 1990s, but was told the statute of limitations were up. This is the second individual that sexually assaulted me, and in neither case have I received any justice from the military. I made a report in 2021 regarding the sexual assaults from my father. Again, no justice or peace for me due to the statute of limitations. I have never been married and never will have a long-term stable relationship. I was a vulnerable 17-year-old when I first became a patient of Dr. S, and he took advantage of my unstable home life and the recent death of my grandfather. He knew that my own father was physically, psychologically, and sexually abusive towards me. He knew all these things and used those factors against me and sexually assaulted me multiple times. He heavily medicated me for anxiety and depression and admitted he did not know how to treat me in his deposition for my civil suit against him. Due to the inability of the FBI and JAG to help me with my case in the 1990s, I was only left with bringing a civil case and won. During a counseling session with Dr. S, he alluded to inappropriate behavior with some of his other patients. He even said he had a fan club of individuals who were his patients from the high school I was attending. I have never been able to get over what this disgusting individual did to me and for how long he subjected me to his deviant, perverted behaviors. I know what I say in this letter will not sway you, and based on the recommendations from Major X and the rest of the team, you will make the decision not to bring Dr. S to justice. My own father groomed me and taught me never to cry. Dr. S used that to his advantage and little by little told me it was all right to cry and mourn my grandfather's death. He held me in his arms and encouraged me to cry on his shoulder. It progressed from that to walking me over to the exam table and holding me in his arms, rocking me as I cried, and then forcibly kissing me on the lips and then putting his tongue in my mouth. He would rub his crotch against me, and I could feel his erection. He would quietly moan and groan as he performed these vile acts upon me. I can still feel the touch of his lab coat on my left cheek as he forcibly turned my head to kiss me and force his tongue into my mouth. I can still feel the ridge of his tongue he later told me came from an accident he experienced as a child. I had never had sexual intercourse until Dr. S sexually assaulted me. He performed both pelvic and rectal exams with no chaperone in the room. He took me to base housing and sexually assaulted me. You are a man and cannot understand how degrading this behavior was and how utterly devastated and confused I was as a 17-year-old. Dr. S knew I did not have family support, knew my father sexually and physically abused me. He even went so far as to visit me at an outpatient treatment facility that I went to and took me to a room to sexually assault me there as well. The staff knew that he was a doctor and didn't question his request to visit me. My father had abandoned me and the rest of my family, and Dr. S knew all these things and how much I was wanting a father figure to love me. He knew of my Mexican-American heritage and the feeling in the Hispanic community that we do not share our pain or talk about uncomfortable topics, how things are kept in the dark. You don't air your dirty laundry. He was arrogant enough to know I would not tell anyone. I tried to commit suicide due to what Dr. S did to me. Not only did I have to go through these sexual assaults, but I had to relive these painful memories during the multiple interviews with CID. I know that none of my words in this letter can completely express how I have utterly been destroyed by this evil man. I know the Army doesn't care, and I just am another life that was destroyed that isn't worthy of the military to care about. Dr. S won, and I knew he would ultimately win. Another sexual pedophile perpetrator left to walk the streets, never having to pay for destroying another life. The military says they care about dependents, about brats, but apparently not in my case. My life has been ruined forever, and by the mere chance you or the Army think I am being melodramatic, I assure you that at my age, I know going forward I will still continue to be single, continue to have to go through some type of psychological counseling, to try and deal with the malicious attacks against me and never be able to trust anyone, especially men. I will never have children, grandchildren, never marry. I will carry this to my grave and hope that one day God will finally leave me with these painful memories that I will always carry with me. No matter the statute of limitations, the Army has failed me and will continue to fail those who are active duty and those who have retired and have experienced rape and sexual harassment. I am the only one who is paying for these sexual assaults with my life forever, not the Army and certainly not Dr. S. I will forever carry this with me in every atom, every neuron, every fiber of my body. There are not enough scalding baths, showers, use of any type of clean solution or acid to cleanse me from the filthiness that affects only me for the rest of my natural life. I can only hope that God will make it a short one because I am so tired of carrying this shame, this humiliation. He threatened on multiple occasions to kidnap me, and I've always been fearful of that threat even to this day. Now, since the military has chosen not to pursue my case, I will still be left constantly looking over my shoulder for some type of retaliation, constantly living in fear. Due to conflicting information I was receiving from CID, I was compelled to contact President Joe Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Secretary of the Army Christian Wormuth, Special Agent Gordon D. Ford, Director of the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command, Judge Advocate General of the United States, Lieutenant General Stuart D. Wersch, the Inspector General of the United States, Lieutenant General Donna W. Martin, Attorney General of the United States, Merrick B. Garland, Congresswoman Jackie Speer, and Texas State Representative Veronica Escobar, as well as many others, to see if they could possibly assist me, because I did not feel the Army was taking me seriously. It took CID almost a month to find Dr. S at the beginning of this investigation, and I have very little faith that CID will follow through with the titling, as I was informed as being the only thing they could do to hold Dr. S accountable for what he did to me. I have been failed by the Army at every turn. I suspect other doctors, nurses, staff at the adolescent pediatric clinic may have known something was wrong. I went for weekly appointments and spent hours in his office. Not one staff member ever bothered to knock on the door to check on me. Dr. S had the whole clinic fooled because he ran the clinic and you never questioned a superior officer. He used his rank to intimidate me and his staff. I knew from my own father, you don't question a superior officer, a full-bird colonel. He knew my history with my own father. He used that against me, the need I had for someone to love me because I didn't get that from my own biological father. I never married, I never had children. I will never know who I could have become, places I could have gone for not what this individual did to me. Dr. S victimized me for many years, and the Army continues to victimize me due to the lack of pursuing my case. There's probable cause for rape of a minor, but due to the opinion of the JAG team, and they feel they cannot win my case. I understand that, but again, no justice, no peace for me for the rest of my life. I'm aware that we all have our crosses to bear, but after my case is officially closed, everyone will go on with their lives. I must live with the aftermath of Dr. S.'s action for the rest of my life. You have taken the time to learn about my case and make the final decision, and after that, you will go on with your other duties running for it. I will always live with this hanging over me. No one other than another sexual assault survivor can understand what I must endure daily and continue to do so for the rest of my life. I will continue to fear for my life. Probable cause for rape of a minor. I knew when I started this process, the military would never give me justice. I see every day in the news, the Military Times, the Army Times, the National News, etc., how the military claims to care about sexual harassment and sexual assault, but continues to fall short of making the perpetrators pay for what they have done. I know I'm not the only civilian who has been the victim of some sort of sexual assault by military personnel. No one bothered to save me as a minor, so I had to try and save myself as an adult. I've had to empower myself. How many things I might have or could have done if not for what Dr. S had done to me. If he had referred me out to the psychiatric clinic instead of keeping me in the adolescent clinic so he could have easy access to me and continue to see me and continue to sexually assault me. I was told I had aged out of the clinic, but he kept me as a patient. I was repeatedly sexually assaulted by Colonel S., a pediatrician who did not have the appropriate credentials and admitted he did not know how to treat my depression and anxiety. But rather than refer me out to another physician, he kept me to have easy access and continued to subject me to his grossly deviant behaviors for years. I will continue to be a proud Mexican-American Air Force brat who will never receive the justice I should have from the United States Army. No justice for the repeated sexual assaults I endured from my father, nor the repeated sexual assaults I endured from Colonel S., a pedophile pediatrician. Probable cause for a sexual assault of a minor. The Army is telling me that Dr. S did to me is my fault, as Dr. S tried to make me believe when I first approached him about what happened. Dr. S and the Army get out of this scot-free, and I must continue to live with the aftermath of the actions of this perverted individual. He is not even worth being called a human being. I know the Army doesn't deal with what ifs, but what if I'd gotten pregnant? What if I had gotten some sexually transmitted disease? My trust has been shattered in people, especially in men in the military. He's never shown any remorse nor guilt for what he has done to me. He is a narcissist who thinks he can get away with anything. I was subjected to continuous gaslighting that it was my fault and that it never happened until he finally admitted what he had done. The Army thinks of it as boys will be boys. He was and continues to be a disgusting, weak thing and was having marital problems when I was first subjected to these repeated sexual assaults. During his deposition, he alluded to the fact his second marriage dissolved due to an affair he was having with someone else. I was lucky enough to hold myself together to obtain my master's degree, but who knows if I had been able to reach and receive a PhD. If he had referred me out to a hospital psychiatrist or psychologist, maybe I would have found an ally and lost some of the fear I had and told them what he was doing to me. He chose not to do that so he could continue to sexually assault me in the clinic where no staff members would question his actions as a doctor and a full bird colonel. I was never able to give consent. The Army continues to re-victimize me and letting this pervert get away with what he did to me. Statute or no statute of limitations, he had power over me as a colonel, an adult, a doctor, 21 years older than me. Dr. S will never have to face any kind of consequences other than a small slap on the wrist with a titling. The Army will be silent about what Dr. S did to me. I am not a soldier, but you are a commander. You have the power over me and my future, just as Dr. S did and continues to do so. I am supposed to do as the Army says, embrace the suck, and be okay with the Army not pursuing my case. Dr. S took my soul and continues to reside in every fiber of my body. His actions will forever affect me and everything I do and every relationship I have, whether it be a family member or friend. I only turned 17 a few months prior to my first appointment with him. He was 21 years my senior. There was a power imbalance. He was in a high-powered position. He had power over me, and the Army has power over me. What power did I have? None. None then and none now. I will always suffer from PTSD, not from any war overseas, but from Dr. S, what Dr. S did to me. I continue to have nightmares, feelings of guilt, shame, inadequacies. I already felt those same things from what my father had done. And in addition to those feelings, I felt crazy because Dr. S blamed me for what he had done. No one would ever believe Dr. S, a full bird colonel, would do any of these things in his office to a young adolescent patient. He denied me my rights as a teenager and my right as a fully functioning adult. Shame on him and shame on all those in the military who failed me. What was the cutoff age for the military to pursue my case? Maybe if I'd been 16, 15, or 10. Obviously not any of those ages. You might not think he is a pedophile, but he meets that definition in my mind. I will never meet you, but you hold my life in your hand with your decision. I know you are used to holding people's lives in your hand. You do it every day. However, those are your soldiers, and I am just some former brat from another branch of the military. I know all these cases are unique and different than mine, but if the Army and the other branches of the military wouldn't give them justice, what chance do I have? Specialist Vanessa Guillen, PFC Asia Graham, Captain Aaron Scallon, Specialist Suzanne Swift, Jacob Manning, Airman First Class Heather King, Staff Sergeant Casey Shufish, Florida Air National 125th Fighter Wing, Lieutenant Emily Borland, U.S. Manning James Landreth, thousands more. If the military hasn't prosecuted the perpetrators who assaulted these individuals, of course the military isn't going to prosecute retired Dr. S, a physician in the United States Army, for probable cause of rape of a minor. Respectfully.
So many comments, so many thoughts running through my head. That letter articulates in so many different ways, in so many different levels, in so many different dynamics, the plight of a rape and sex assault victim. And it does so in a very deep-seated, heartfelt way. It defines not only the rape issues and sex assault issues to an extreme, detailed way, but it also enumerates and articulates the multiple issues that we as victims and survivors face from rape culture and what it feels like to be ignored. And the fact that you wrote such an amazingly powerful, raw, transparent letter to someone who has the authority to bring justice to a perpetrator and that they didn't speaks volumes as to how powerful rape culture is in this country and the world. Diane, thank you for reading that.
That same letter I sent to all those over 250 individuals at the local, state, and federal level, and less than 5 reached out to me.
If words that powerful can't sway someone in authority to bring that kind of scum to justice, I don't know what will. And it's terrifying.
Or even stop a more pervasive problem. To discourage people to know that you can be brought back on active duty, which is allowed under the law. It just takes high levels of approval. And anybody in that level that says, no, I do not concur, they squash it. And it's too easy to do that.
Which absolutely articulates and defines the human mind of always looking for the easy way out.
Pass the buck.
It's so sad. Diane, I hope this episode reaches hundreds of thousands of ears that can relate to you. I hope people reach out to you with support and appreciation, because that's what I feel for having you here on this show today. And you too, Don Michael, for your persistence, your strength, your honor in upholding your value system and extending it to Diane the way you have. I hope we can stay in touch. I really do. I would like for your permission to have the opportunity to reach out to you in the future and maybe even have you come back and fill us in on how you're doing, Don Michael, how you're doing, what progress may or may not have been made in the case. Just kind of keep us.
We're still working.
Yeah.
Won't stop.
I appreciate you allowing me to be on the show. You will never know how much you have meant to myself and others who have been your listeners, other individuals who have been on your podcast. I can only speak for myself, but just giving me this avenue to speak has helped me. I may not get any further in my quest to get justice for the others and myself. I just recently found the veteran who was 11 or 12 when she was sexually assaulted by a military physician. So little by little, it's coming out. Thank you, Mr. Markel. I appreciate everything you have done for me. If anybody in your audience wants to reach out, I will talk to them. I'm here for anybody. May not be worth much to their situation, but whatever you think I can help you with.
You bet. Thank you so much for those words. And if somebody does want to contact you, I'm encouraging them as they listen to this to reach out to me, and I will put you in touch with Diane. So thank you for that offer.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, Don Michael.
Yes,
I presume I can also push people your way if they are in a similar situation.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I don't charge anything. I have avenues to try to help people. And so if I can be of assistance, I'll let them know right out if I'm not going to be able to help.
Thank you both. It was amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Thank you, Mr. Markham. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. My deepest gratitude goes out to Diane for having the courage to reach out to me and for being a guest on this show. Diane, your strength and fortitude are admirable, and I'm glad you're part of the SAS family. I also want to extend my sincere appreciation to Don Michael Barber for agreeing to be a great support to Diane and her cause. Don Michael, I know how deeply you share in that cause, and I appreciate and admire you for being willing to help bring justice to Diane and other survivors of rape and sexual assault. Hey, SAS listeners, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for refusing to look away, and thank you for being part of bringing justice to victims and survivors of rape or sexual assault just by being part of this conversation. It's as important as my other admonition, to start by believing. You're helping bring justice to victims and survivors, because we all know someone who's been impacted by rape or sexual assault. Don't miss next week's episode. You'll find it just as fascinating and just as important. We'll see you next week.